In his life, Charlie Kirk used his words to mock the living and the dead. He had every right to. Most likely radicalized because he heard or thought he heard homophobic comments by Charlie Kirk. He used the word scumbag to describe George Floyd, who was murdered by a cop. He had every right to. He said MLK was an awful person. He has every right to.
I want to hop into a Piers Morgan panel with more of the moral grandstanding we've been seeing about the Charlie Kirk shooting and political rhetoric from this time Piers Morgan and Kari Lake. So if you can, take a moment, leave us a like on the video, helps us on a ton. We really appreciate it. And let's get right into an important discussion with some fact checks ready.
Let me actually unify all of us, and let's bring the temperature down. First and foremost, I think every single person on this panel condemns the horrible murder of Charlie Kirk by a 22-year-old white man from a conservative Christian family who was apolitical, according to all the evidence, and was radicalized online, as Tim said, and most likely radicalized because he heard or thought he heard homophobic comments by Charlie Kirk, one of us, as the Republican governor of Utah said. Not a lefty, not Antifa.
And these are indisputable big boy facts that he is laying out here, and MAGA doesn't like that, right? But the thing is here, like in the wake of any tragedy, any shooting, anything like this, you can think back to the Trump shooting, right? Anything, MAGA scrambles to either blame trans people, woke ideology, or just the left largely in any way possible. They'll do the state if they can. They'll do the city if they have to. If they can't do that, then, oh, well, does the person, is he trans? Is he black? Is he this, right? Literally whatever they can. Has he ever posted and voted Democrat? Anything they can to avoid the real conversations. Look at how they did the Trump shooting. I had clowns in my comments before I even knew the shooting happened saying the Democrats are evil and they paid for it and all of this, and it turns out a Republican did the shooting. And they did the same song and dance this time, but it turns out the guy either like he had a trans roommate or a trans romantic partner. Thus MAGA is trying to hyperfixate on that and use it as proof that he's a leftist and they were right all this time, because apparently who you're attracted to is political now to MAGA, when in reality, I think it seems pretty obvious to me, pretty cut and dry. Again, we should wait for more information to come out, but it seems kind of clear to me the guy came from a religious conservative family who let him have guns when he really shouldn't have had them, because religious conservative fanatics often like guns, and he was involved with the trans person to the point that he felt radicalized by Charlie Kirk's transphobia. I mean, I love how these clowns can victim blame the likes of George Floyd, who was brutally murdered in front of all of our eyes, but then can't ascribe any accountability whatsoever to the white man or their side's rhetoric largely.
When you say there's no suggestion of that, that's not true.
You interrupted all of them. Let me just say my piece, and then I'll lower the temperature. And facts matter. As of just 2 days ago, the FBI sources have said that they find no credible evidence that he was far left. And I'll be fair, no credible evidence that he's far right. This was a man who was radicalized online, 22-year-old white man, not the left. He wasn't transgender. He wasn't Antifa. He wasn't progressives. That's a fact.
You don't know any of that.
Temperature. Let's lower the temperature.
You're not dialing down the temperature. You're
Absolutely. I'm saying
you're removing any accountability for the way that some of the investigation appears to be leading. I think we should wait, but I don't think that when someone puts anti-fascist on the bullet casings, it's a bit of a clue.
Can he answer your question, Piers? You asked him why was he a scumbag yesterday by live tweeting and saying horrendous things on Charlie Kirk's memorial.
That was Carrie.
Yeah,
Carrie,
no,
listen,
I
lying is a sin in Christianity. Carrie, lying is a sin in Christianity.
Jesus doesn't like liars, which is why all of MAGA is doomed to hell for the election lies. I mean, at least the ones smart enough to know they were lying when they said the election was stolen, like Kari Lake. I agree, though. Facts do matter, and they have a liberal bias if you ask MAGA most of the time. But this is why I hate where MAGA has taken us in terms of the landscape with our political discourse, because again, right, if you think political leanings drive shootings or drive violence, you have an incredibly juvenile way of thinking, right? The best connection you could draw there is that conspiracies that are typically associated with one side can obviously motivate shootings. Like the Great Replacement theory is something typically espoused by the right, and it leads to the targeted killings of migrants. Now, that is something you can't just say, oh, this person did this conspiracy, it's typically associated with right, therefore right. However, if you have someone like Trump espousing, like doing the Great Replacement theory, and then the shooter cites that, or then even cites Trump or cites Tucker Carlson who did it on Fox News or something, then a connection can be drawn, right? You can't just go, Well, left, so conspiracy, because what is the conspiracy here? That Charlie Kirk is a fascist? Because he is a fascist, right? I would debate anyone on that. He unequivocally is a fascist, and he absolutely was a bigot as well. These things are true, right? We have, I would say, a moral obligation to point things out like that when they are true, where again, that is clearly what seems to have motivated the shooting, which is why a much more productive conversation to have in the wake of a horrendous, brutal killing that shouldn't have happened, let me be clear here, is to tone down that kind of rhetoric. But that doesn't score the kind of political points MAGA wants, so you won't ever hear them say that.
I defended Charlie Kirk because he is a free speech maximalist. In his life, Charlie Kirk used his words to mock the living and the dead. He had every right to. He used the word scumbag to describe George Floyd, who was murdered by a cop. He had every right to. He said MLK was an awful person. He has every right to. He said he was against the Civil Rights Act. He had every right to. Charlie Kirk would also agree with me and other Republicans right now, including Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, other conservatives, or those who are loved by conservatives like Tim Dillon, Ben Shapiro, in that the president of the United States, President Trump, the leader of the country and the leader of MAGA, should not abuse and use his death to do what? Abuse his powers to cancel critics like Jimmy Kimmel. I think Charlie Kirk, in his words, with his life, if we look at what he said, would say, you know what? My critics can debate me, they can mock me. His producer said that Charlie Kirk actually enjoyed South Park criticizing him, and that South
but that
Park
wasn't my question.
This is the only kind of answer Democrats should ever give to this question. Remind these clowns of the absolutely horrendous things Charlie Kirk regularly said about multiple minority groups, and how he and his entire side thought the oppression and the hatred he spread was his God-given right to do so. So like, why would you then not let others be held to the same standard? Why does Charlie Kirk get some kind of special pleading? Is it because of his skin color? Like, for me, it's where I wish MAGA weren't such weirdos in the way they try to martyr the worst people of all time, because like, we didn't have to have these conversations, like, frankly, right? I didn't think that we had to do this until the right was like, well, every Democrat must pretend Charlie Kirk was a saint and a great guy. We have to make a day of remembrance for him. And it's like, this guy was a bigot and a fascist. Why would we do any of this? Now we have to have these conversations. Like, we could have just condemned the violence. We could have sent condolences and empathy to his family, like I did, like many others on the left, every elected Democrat did, and then just discussed how Republicans need to turn it down so these things do not continue. Like, you've gone too far, take accountability, and let's move the fuck on, right? But the Republicans rather score political points and absorb all accountability from themselves rather than fix any problems. They're children.